The sky tore open right when the stagecoach hit the top of the ridge. Thunder came down like a cannonball, a low, angry rumble that shook the very ground under my boots. I stood on the porch of my ranch house, hat pulled low, and I watched. I'm Gideon Rock. I don't like visitors, and I sure as hell don't like storms. The air tasted like rust and coming fire. If that coach got stuck in the clay when the rain really hit, it'd be there till spring. But it kept coming, spitting rocks and kicking up a cloud of red dust, like it was daring the sky to do its worst. I took a step down, just as old Merle yanked the reins, the horses huffing and steaming in the sudden cool. The driver climbed down, cursing about his back and the busted road, and he swung open that coach door. A single bag hit the dirt. Looked worn, but you could tell someone took care of it. Then came the feet. 2 little pairs in mended boots and 1 set of heels that had seen better days, caked in the dust of a dozen forgotten towns. The woman who stepped out didn't look like any housekeeper I'd ever seen. She was young, too young. Thin, but stood straight, like she'd spent her whole life trying not to break. Her clothes were plain, black skirt and blouse, and a bonnet that had seen too much sun. But her eyes, that's what got me. They were gray as a storm cloud, and they looked right through you. Behind her, 2 little girls, twins maybe, clung to her skirt. One had crooked pigtails and a scrape on her elbow. The other was holding a stuffed rabbit so tight its ears were bent, her face a map of questions. They stared at my ranch house like it was a giant waiting to eat them. The woman pulled her shoulders back. "Mr. Rock." Her voice was steady, quiet, the kind of voice you get when you learn crying doesn't solve a thing. I nodded. "That's me." "I'm Lily," she said, then paused. "Lily Harper. I'm here about the job." I just stared. The first drops of rain, big and heavy, started popping on the brim of my hat. "You came alone?" She glanced down at the girls. "These are my daughters, Lottie and Millie." She lifted her chin, not asking for pity, just stating a fact. "I hope that won't be a problem." Of course it was a problem. The ad I put in the paper was simple. Housekeeper needed. Quiet ranch, good pay, no nonsense. I didn't ask for a woman with 2 shadows and a past she was clearly running from. I needed someone to cook and clean, not someone who came with a whole life's worth of trouble packed in one scuffed-up bag. I opened my mouth to tell her to get back on the coach, tell Merle to turn it around right now. But then the little one, Millie, stepped forward. She squinted up at me, real serious. "Are you the man with the cows?" I blinked. "Among other things." She nodded like she'd just solved a great mystery. "Mama said cows don't like yelling, so we brought inside voices." A smile almost cracked my face before I could stop it. 2 weeks. That's what I told myself. Just give her 2 weeks. "You can take the back room by the kitchen," I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Meals are at 6. Don't touch a thing in my study, and keep the girls out of the barn. Too many ways to get hurt." "Yes, sir." She nodded, and the relief in her eyes was so plain it almost hurt to look at. I led them inside. The air in the house was stale, like it had been holding its breath for years. I showed them the kitchen, and then I just left. Retreated down the hall like a stranger in my own home. Later that night, I heard dishes clinking. Not loud, just careful. The sound of someone trying way too hard not to make a mistake. Then a soft thud. Porcelain breaking. A tiny gasp. I walked back to the kitchen. Lily was on her knees, sweeping up a shattered saucer. Millie was trying to help, but Lily held her back with a gloved hand. Her other hand, the one with the broom, was shaking. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice tight. "The shelf was loose. I didn't—" "Don't worry about it," I cut her off. Her shoulders sagged, just a little. She didn't look at me, just kept sweeping those broken pieces like they were precious. Millie tugged on my shirt. "She's good at trying," the little girl whispered, "even if she's not good at other stuff." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "That's more than most." That night the storm finally broke. Lightning lit up the hills and thunder rattled the windows. But from down the hall I heard something new. A woman humming, a little off-key but steady. Then a giggle, then silence. For the first time since my wife left, the house didn't feel empty. It felt like someone had opened a window and let the air back in. And lying there in the dark, I started to wonder what other ghosts that sound might wake up. The next morning, the sun came out mean, baking the mud into a cracked open puzzle. Inside, Lily was fighting a losing battle with a mop. Her sleeves were rolled up, her face was pinched with focus, and she was barefoot. The bucket was too full, and with one wrong move, she slipped. She caught herself on the counter with a grunt, water sloshing everywhere. Lottie, the quiet twin, didn't even look up from her book. But Millie was dancing around the kitchen, her apron strings flying, pretending she was some kind of fancy ballerina. Lily got her balance back, her cheeks bright red. "Girls," she said, her voice a soft warning. "Let's not." Too late. Millie did a little twirl and bumped right into the broom. The broom hit the bucket. A wave of soapy water flooded across the floor. Lily gasped, then bit her lip so hard I thought she'd draw blood. Her hands were trembling again as she dropped the mop and grabbed a towel. "Sorry, Mama," Millie said, hopping over the new puddle. "I didn't mean to make the floor lakish." Lily just closed her eyes for a second. That word, Mama, it seemed to hit her like a stone every time. Not because it was a lie, but because maybe it was getting too close to the truth. She sent the girls to sit down, her voice gentle but strained. That's when I cleared my throat from the doorway. She jumped like she'd been shot. She hadn't heard me come in. My eyes went from the puddle on the floor to the soaked hem of her dress. "I take it the mop lost," I said. She straightened up, trying to look composed. It was a fair fight. I stepped into the kitchen, careful on the wet boards. "You don't have to do everything at once." "I'd rather be useful sooner than later," she shot back, her pride a shield. I looked at her, really looked at her. "You're already useful. This house hasn't had this much life in it for years." She didn't know how to take that. I could see the confusion in her eyes. She thought it was an accusation, but it was just a fact. The silence in this place had been deafening. She asked if I needed anything, her voice all business again. I just shook my head and went to the sink to wash my hands. The air between us got thick again, full of things we weren't saying. Then from the other room, Millie's voice clear as a bell. "Lottie says we can go out to the tree today." Lily went rigid. I turned from the sink, just slightly. Millie popped her head around the corner, her eyes wide. "I mean Mama. I meant Mama." The color drained from Lily's face. I didn't say a word. I just dried my hands, slow, watching her out of the corner of my eye. She bent down, fiddling with the towel, her voice too calm. "They get confused sometimes. It's been a long journey." I could feel her waiting for me to press, to ask the questions she was dreading. But I didn't. Not yet. I just let her feel my eyes on her back, sharp and heavy as she cleaned up a mess that had nothing to do with spilled water. The tension didn't break all day. It hung in the air like humidity before a storm. I went to the barn. The girls played outside. Lily sat at the kitchen table, mending one of my old shirts, her stitches small and angry. Later, I found her still there. "I didn't mean to embarrass you earlier," I said, leaning in the doorway. She didn't look up. "You didn't. But there's something you're not saying." She looked up then, her gray eyes flashing. "You don't owe me anything, Miss Harper," I said, walking closer. "But I don't like being lied to." Her jaw was tight. "I'm not lying," she said, her voice low and fierce. "I may not have told you everything, but I haven't lied. That's a fine line. It's the only line I have." I just nodded and walked away. What else could I do? That night, I saw her through the window, just sitting there in the dark kitchen. And out by the barn, I saw the flicker of a lantern. One of my ranch hands, Elias, was making the rounds. But he stopped, and he was looking back at the house. looking right at her window. And it wasn't a friendly look. It was a look of recognition, and it sent a chill right down my spine. The next morning felt different, forced. Lily made corn cakes, and the girls were almost too well behaved, like little soldiers on parade. Gideon was quiet, but his eyes missed nothing. He wasn't just watching Lily anymore. He was watching his men, too. He was watching everyone. After breakfast, Lily found herself in the pantry, reaching for the flour. Her hand bumped a small wooden box tucked away on a high shelf. It fell, and papers scattered across the floor. Receipts, old notes, and a single heavy envelope sealed with a wax stamp, an embossed Q. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. The seal was already broken. She pulled out the letter. The ink was faded, the handwriting sharp and angry. If he signs the title without knowing, your part will be honored. The spring house is the key. Make sure he doesn't see the map change. QR. Lily's breath hitched. Springhouse. Map. She shoved the letter into her apron, her heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't hear Gideon come up behind her until he was right at the door. "You all right in there?" he asked, his voice low. She grabbed the flour tin, her voice shaking just a little. "Yes, just needed the last of this." He seemed to accept it, turning away without another word. Lily stood there, frozen, the letter burning a hole in her pocket. Something was deeply wrong on this ranch, and for the first time she realized the trouble she was running from might be nothing compared to the trouble she had just found. The ranch kitchen started to feel like hers. It wasn't fancy. It smelled like old wood and coffee, and the stove had a personality, hissing every time she lit it. But she learned its ways. The pies she baked were still a little crooked, and her biscuits were never perfectly round, but the ranch hands didn't care. They started staying longer after supper, their smiles wide. One of the older hands, Elias, the one I saw watching her, tipped his hat to her one morning. "That apple pie could solve most of the world's problems, ma'am." She'd smiled, a real smile this time, not of pride, but of relief. For once, something she touched didn't fall to pieces. The girls were changing, too. Lottie, my quiet little shadow, started helping her measure flour, her small face serious. Millie chased the chickens, giving them all ridiculous names like Queen Isabella and Duchess Fluffenstuff. The silence of the ranch was gone, replaced by the sound of their laughter, and sometimes I even caught myself smiling. But the peace was thin, like ice on a winter pond. One afternoon, I was on the porch talking with Elias. I kept my voice low. "Still think it was Baines?" I asked. Baines was my old bookkeeper. He'd disappeared a month ago, right after a large sum of money went missing from the accounts. Elias chewed on a piece of hay. "He's the only one who ever touched the ledgers besides you, boss." "What about that letter she found?" Elias shrugged, but his eyes were sharp. "Don't know yet. She's got her own secrets. But she's good with those girls. That's got to count for something." I didn't answer. Inside, Lily heard our voices and stepped back from the window, her face flushed. The letter was still hidden. That evening, she watched me from the kitchen. I was in the corral with a young colt, checking a bandage on its leg. Elias was there, pointing something out. But then Lily noticed something that made her blood run cold. Another ranch hand, a newer one named Mark, was standing by the barn, talking to Elias. And as she watched, she saw Mark slip a small folded piece of paper into Elias's hand. Elias pocketed it without looking down, a smooth, practiced move. He wasn't just a loyal old hand. He was a spy. For who? Quincy Rock? Or someone else? That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She pulled the envelope out again. "The spring house is the key." She had to know what was in there. The next morning, she waited until the girls were playing and I was out on the range. She slipped away, following the fence line down to a dip in the land where an old stone building sat covered in ivy, the spring house. The door was rusted but not locked. She pushed it open. It was cool and damp inside. Empty shelves lined one wall. But then she saw it. A single loose stone in the floor. She pried it up with her fingers. Beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth, was a rolled-up parchment. The wax seal had the same QR stamp. Her hands shaking, she carried it back to the house. This wasn't just a letter anymore. This was a conspiracy, and it was happening right under my nose. She waited until the house was dark and quiet. Then she knocked on my study door. "Something wrong?" I asked, looking up from my ledgers. "I need to show you something," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She laid the letter and the parchment on my desk. I read the letter first, my jaw tightening. Then I unrolled the parchment. It was a map, a survey of my land, but the borders were wrong. They'd been redrawn just enough to cut out the underground spring and a patch of land my father always said was rich with minerals. It put them right on the edge of my cousin Quincy's property. My hands curled into fists. "Where did you find this?" "In the spring house, hidden." I leaned back in my chair, the air thick with my anger. "You still think I'm making this up?" she asked softly. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the dark land. "That's spring," I said, my voice hoarse. "My father called it our promise. He said as long as we had water, we had a future." I turned to face her, my eyes burning. "Someone's trying to steal our future." She crossed her arms, her chin held high. "They're trying to steal it from the inside, too. I saw Mark pass a note to Elias yesterday." My blood ran cold. Elias? He'd worked for my father. I trusted him with my life. But if Lily was right, my whole world was built on a lie. "I'll deal with Quincy," I said, my voice like stone. "And I'll deal with my men. You just keep those girls close. Things are about to get a whole lot worse." She nodded. "I'm used to that." As she left, she saw the twins asleep on a pallet in the kitchen, their arms thrown around each other. She knelt beside them, her heart aching. Danger was coming, but this time she wasn't running from it. She was standing her ground, and she wasn't standing alone. The night my cousin Quincy arrived, the rain came down in sheets, hard and mean. It felt like the sky was trying to wash the whole world away. Lily was at the window, watching a fancy black motor car crawl up the muddy lane, its headlights cutting through the darkness. I was already at the door. I could feel the storm inside me matching the one outside. "You expecting someone?" she asked. "No," I gritted out and pulled the door open. A man stepped inside, dripping water on the floor like he owned the place. He was tall, clean-shaven, and wore a suit that probably cost more than my best horse. He had my family's face, the sharp cheekbones and stony eyes, but his were cold, empty. "Cousin," Quincy said, a smile playing on his lips. "Long time." "Not long enough," I shot back. Lily took a step back, her instincts screaming. Quincy's eyes slid over to her, his smile turning into a smirk. "And this must be the new help. The standards have certainly changed." Lily stood taller. "Lily Harper, housekeeper." From the hallway, Millie piped up, "And cook." Quincy just raised an eyebrow. "Charming." I stepped between them, blocking his view. "I didn't invite you, Quincy. What do you want?" "Business," he said, tapping a leather folder he held under his arm. "Thought I'd deliver these myself. Save you the trip into town." The folder looked important, official. "Leave it on the table," I said. We sat in the parlor, the only sounds the ticking clock and the rain beating against the glass. Lily brought coffee, but no one touched it. "So," Quincy began, all smooth charm, "with Baines gone, I figured you'd need a hand with the land division. I took the liberty of having a new survey drawn up, just a few minor adjustments to the border lines for tax purposes, you understand." I said nothing. I just watched him. Lily watched from the hall, her heart pounding. "Of course," he went on. "You'll just need to sign off on it. Right here." He slid the folder across the table. I opened it. Inside were maps, official-looking stamps, redrawn property lines. They looked perfect, but they were a perfect lie. It was the same map Lily had found in the spring house, the one that stole my water, my future. The pen was in his hand, offered to me like a friendly gesture, but it was a weapon. I looked up and saw Lily in the hall, shaking her head, her eyes wide with warning. I pushed the folder back across the table. No. Quincy's smile vanished. For a second, I saw the snake underneath the skin. Then he recovered. Think it over, Gideon. It's a generous offer. He stood up, nodded curtly at Lily. Pleasure, Miss Harper. Then he walked out into the storm, not even bothering with an umbrella this time. He was that sure of himself. I didn't move until the sound of his car had faded. When I finally stood, my hands were shaking with rage. Lily met me in the kitchen. You didn't sign, she whispered. No, I said. But I almost did. If you hadn't found that map, he had it all dressed up to look real. She stepped closer. He'll be back. I know. We stood there in the quiet kitchen until Millie climbed onto a chair. Are we going to have to move again? She asked, her little voice full of worry. I knelt down beside her, and for the first time, the words felt true. No, sweetheart. You're safe here. This is your home. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, staring at the maps, the real one and the fake one side by side. Lily knocked on the door. I've lost too much to family already, I told her, not looking up. I won't lose this land too. She sat across from me. You won't, but you can't fight him alone, and you can't trust your men. I finally looked at her, the exhaustion and the anger plain on my face. You shouldn't be in the middle of this. It's not your fight. They're my family now, she said softly, her gaze flicking towards the girls' room. This ranch, this is our home. And I know what it feels like to have someone try to rip that away from you. I let out a rough laugh. I told you I wasn't good with people. You're better than you think, she said. The moment hung in the air, fragile and new. This isn't over, I said, my voice low. Quincy doesn't just want the land. He wants to see me broken. And if he finds out how much you know... He already looks at the girls like they're obstacles, she whispered. I stood up, the decision made. Then we make sure they're never alone. Not for a second. The next morning I called a meeting. Not with all the hands, just two. An old-timer named Jed, who'd been here longer than I had, and a young kid named Sam. I didn't tell them everything, just that there was trouble, and we needed eyes on the fences. I didn't mention Elias or Mark. I'd deal with them myself, in my own time. The war for the Rock Ranch had just begun. The quiet that followed was the worst kind. It was the quiet of a held breath, of a fuse burning down to the powder. On the surface, things went on. Chores got done, meals were cooked, the sun rose and set. The girls' laughter was the only thing that felt real, but even that sounded fragile now. Beneath it all, the tension was a wire pulled tight. I barely slept. At night, I'd walk the porch, back and forth, the wood groaning under my feet, my hand never far from the shotgun I now kept by the door. Lily tried to keep things normal for the girls, but I'd see her staring out the window, her face pale. I saw Millie jump at the sound of a horse riding up too fast. The fear was seeping into the walls of the house itself. Then, one morning, it happened. Lily was hanging laundry when she saw him. A man standing just inside the tree line at the edge of the property, just watching the house. She didn't scream. She dropped the laundry basket and ran. Gideon! By the time I got there, shotgun in hand, he was gone. All that was left was a single deep boot print in the soft earth. It wasn't Quincy's. This was someone he'd hired. A professional. Back in the kitchen, Lily was pacing, her hands twisting in her apron. He sent him, didn't he? Probably, I said, my voice grim. To watch. To wait for a chance. She stopped and looked at me, her eyes full of a fire I was starting to recognize. This isn't just about land, is it? He wants to humiliate you. He wants to prove he's the better rock. I couldn't deny it. My father left me this ranch, not him. Quincy never forgave him for it. He thinks it's his birthright. And us? She whispered. The girls and me? What are we in his game? Leverage, I said, the word tasting like poison. He thinks you're my weakness. Our eyes met, and in that moment something shifted. It wasn't just about the ranch anymore. It was about her, about them. Just then, a sharp knock echoed through the house, not Quincy's arrogant rap. This was different. I opened the door to a tall woman in dusty traveling clothes. She looked like she'd been on the road for a week. Her eyes scanned the room before landing on Lily. "I'm looking for a Lily Harper," she said, her voice sharp. Lily stepped forward and all the color drained from her face. The woman's expression softened in shock. "Lily? My God, you're really here." I looked from one to the other. "Friend of yours?" Lily's voice was a choked whisper. "This is Marion, my aunt." The woman, Marion, stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over the simple room with a look of disdain. "So, this is where you've been hiding." "I had my reasons," Lily said, her hands clenched at her sides. "I didn't come to drag you back," Marion said quickly. "I came because your father passed away." The words hit the air like stones. Lily just stood there, frozen. I knew she was estranged from her family, but the news was still a blow. I could see it in the way she swayed just for a second. "I thought you should know," her aunt continued. "There was an estate sale. I saved what I could, and there's something else." She pulled a folded piece of parchment from her bag. She laid it on the kitchen table. It was a legal document, an affidavit. My eyes scanned the words. It was from Lily's father, dated just before she disappeared. In it, he declared that the twins, Lottie and Millie, were not her daughters. They were his, her half-sisters, born to him and his late second wife, and left in Lily's care upon his death. The secret she'd been carrying, the lie that had been her shield, was laid bare. Lily sank into a chair, her face in her hands. Gideon's voice was quiet, gentle. "Why keep it a secret?" Lily looked up, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. "Because who would take in a girl with no money, no name, and 2 babies? I had nothing. Just a promise I made to my stepmother before she died. A promise to protect them." I stood there, silent, the pieces clicking into place. The way she flinched when the girls called her mama. The fear in her eyes. It wasn't just about poverty. It was about protecting those little girls from a world that would have torn them apart. I looked at the affidavit, then back at her. You kept your promise. That night, the air in the house felt different, cleaner. Later, I found her on the porch. "You were brave today," I said. "I've been scared every day since I left home," she confessed. "Doesn't change the fact," I said, sitting beside her. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. "He'll be back soon, won't he?" she asked. I nodded. "But this time it's different. Now he knows what we're fighting for." She managed a small smile. "I think the land is fighting back, too." And deep in the darkness, beyond the circle of lantern light, a branch snapped. But this time, it wasn't just one man watching the house. It was 2. And one of them was Elias. 2 nights later, all hell broke loose. It started with the smell of smoke. Acrid, biting. I was awake in an instant, my heart pounding. Outside, the moon was gone, swallowed by a thick, unnatural haze. Then came the shouts. "Fire! By the west barn!" My voice thundered through the house. "Lily, get the girls to the cellar." She was already moving, a ghost in the dark, scooping the terrified children from their bed. I grabbed my rifle. The smoke was thicker now, rolling in from the pasture. "They lit the dry grass," I yelled, my voice raw. "Trying to smoke us out, create a diversion." Elias and the other hands were already out there, shadows fighting shadows, their shouts swallowed by the roar of the flames. Lily herded the girls down the cellar steps, her voice a calm whisper in the chaos. "I'll be right back," she promised them. "Don't open this door for anyone but me or Mr. Rock. You understand?" They nodded, their eyes huge and dark. She locked the heavy door behind her. Just as she turned back, the front window exploded inward. A rock, wrapped in oilcloth, crashed onto the floor. Through the shattered glass, I saw him, Quincy, standing by the gate like a king watching his kingdom burn. He had 2 men with him, thugs I'd never seen before. One held a lantern high, the other a shovel, held like a club. I shoved Lily behind me. "He's not getting in this house." She grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace. "I'm with you." There was no time to argue. We moved through the house, barricading the doors, our movements frantic but sure. The fire outside was getting closer. The heat was a living thing. Then, a new sound. A creak from the back of the house, the kitchen door. We both froze. Lily raised the poker, her knuckles white. The door swung open, and Elias stumbled in, blood streaming from a cut on his head. "They came around the east fence," he gasped, leaning against the wall. "Tried to get into the tack room. I stopped them. I think they were after the spring house." Of course. The spring house. It wasn't about the fire. The fire was a distraction. If Quincy could get his hands on the real map, the one Lily found, he could destroy it. Claim it was a forgery. "Where's Mark?" I demanded, helping Elias into a chair. "Sent him to guard the well," Elias groaned. Then footsteps on the front porch, heavy, deliberate, then silence. I crept to the broken window, rifle ready. Quincy was alone now, standing right on the porch steps, the firelight dancing in his cold eyes. "Come on out, Gideon," he called, his voice dripping with false confidence. "Let's not make this any more unpleasant than it has to be." I opened the door a crack. "You've gone too far, Quincy." He just smiled. "One last offer. Sell me the Southern Ridge. Sign over the water rights. I'll call my men off. The fire will be a tragic accident." "No." His smile tightened into a snarl. "You don't have the stomach for this, cousin. You're just one man, a few tired hands, and a house full of other people's problems." Lily stepped out from behind me, her face pale but her eyes blazing. "You don't know the first thing about what this house holds," she said, her voice shaking with rage. Quincy's eyes raked over her. "Ah, yes, the housekeeper. Or should I say, the disgraced daughter of a bankrupt fool, a woman hiding behind a stolen name and borrowed children." Before I could stop her, Lily took another step forward. "My name is Lily Harper, and those are my sisters, and this is our home. And you will not set one more foot on this land." The air crackled. Quincy stared at her, genuinely surprised by the venom in her voice. Then he laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You've chosen your side poorly, little bird," he sneered. Then he turned, mounted his horse, and disappeared into the smoke, his men melting away like ghosts. The threat was gone for now, but the fire was still burning, and we were right in the middle of it. By dawn, the fire was out. The west pasture was a blackened scar, but the house and the barns were safe. Elias had a nasty gash, and Mark was limping, but we were all alive. No one had slept. Before the sun was even fully up, Sheriff Tolan rode in. Elias had sent for him in the middle of the night. Tolan was a lean, tired-looking man who'd seen too much trouble in his time. I told him everything. Lily showed him the letter, the map, the affidavit from her father. The sheriff listened, his eyes missing nothing. He studied the forged map, then the real one. "I've had dealings with Quincy Rock before," he said, his voice a low drawl. "He's always been clever, always staying just on the right side of the law. But this, he looked from the map to the scorched earth outside. This is arson. This is a federal crime. He was here, Lily said, her voice firm. On the porch. We all saw him. Sheriff Tolan nodded slowly. Then it's time I paid Mr. Rock an official visit. But be warned. Men like him have money. They have lawyers. The wheels of justice turn slow, and they can be greased. After he left, a heavy silence fell over the ranch. Everything's changed, I said. She nodded. Yes, it's not over. I looked at her, standing there covered in soot, her face smudged and tired, but her eyes clear and strong. You still want to stay? After all this? She didn't even hesitate. I didn't come here by accident, Gideon. I came here because it felt like the one place in the world where we could be safe, where we could build something. She took a breath. Now I know I was right. I had to look away, a strange tightness in my chest. When I spoke, my voice was low. Then we fight this together. That night she tucked the girls into their bed in the cellar, just to be safe. Will he come back? Lottie whispered. Maybe, Lily told her. But we're not alone anymore. And this time, we're ready. Outside, the smoke had cleared, and the stars were blazing in the night sky. They were shining down on a ranch that was no longer just a piece of land. It was a fortress. It was a home. And it was worth fighting for. The days that followed were a cold war. The air was thick with unspoken threats. We doubled the patrols. I had Jed and Sam watch the fences day and night. The girls stayed inside, their world shrinking to the four walls of the house. The ranch went quiet again, but this time it was a heavy, watchful quiet. Even the animals were on edge. One morning I rode out to the South Ridge and found what I'd been expecting. A freshly painted sign, hammered deep into my land. Property of Quincy Rock, pending legal claim. I tore it out of the ground and brought it back, slamming it down on the kitchen table. He's trying to create the illusion of a dispute, Lily said, her finger tracing the arrogant lettering. Make it look like he has a right, so when the law comes they see a conflict, not a crime. It's smoke and mirrors, I growled, but smoke can still blind people. So we show them there's no fire, she said. That night she sat at the table and wrote letters. One to the State Land Registry Office, detailing Quincy's fraud. One to the editor of the county newspaper, telling our side of the story. She wrote with a fierce, steady hand, laying out the facts, one by one. I read them over her shoulder. You've got more fight in you than any 10 men I know, I told her. She looked up, a sad smile on her face. When you've lost everything once, you learn how to hold on tight. The air between us was charged with something more than just the fight for the land. But neither of us was ready to name it yet. 2 days later, Sheriff Tolan came back. He wasn't alone. With him was a man from the Federal Land Office, an assessor named Arthur Bell. He was a small, neat man with spectacles and a no-nonsense attitude. I'm here, Bell said, to determine who holds the legitimate title to this land. Mr. Quincy Rock has filed a formal claim, citing discrepancies in the original survey. We laid it all out for him, the 2 maps, the letter from the spring house, the affidavit. I even gave him the old ledgers from my father's time, showing decades of tax payments on the very land Quincy was trying to steal. Bell examined every document in silence. Finally, he looked up. May I see the spring house? We walked him down there as the sun began to set. He ran his hand over the old stones, inspected the spot where the map had been hidden. He saw the truth etched into the very foundation of the place. Back at the house, he cleaned his spectacles. I'll file my preliminary report tomorrow, he said. I can't give a final ruling, but based on what I've seen, your claim is strong. His is built on sand. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. Lily let out a breath she'd been holding for days. But then Bell added a warning. Don't get comfortable. If Quincy feels the law closing in, he'll get desperate. He'll lash out before the ink on my report is dry. He was right. That very night, Millie screamed. A sharp, terrified cry that ripped through the house. Lily was there in a second. Millie was sitting bolt upright in bed, pointing a trembling finger at the window. "Someone was there," she sobbed. "A man. He was looking at us." Jed and I searched the entire property. We found it near the barn. A single, fresh boot print, the same one I'd seen before. And this time next to it was a child's hair ribbon, one of Lottie's. He hadn't just been watching. He'd been close enough to touch them. It was a message, a threat. "Next time," I growled, my voice shaking with fury, "he won't just leave a ribbon." The next 3 days were agony. We boarded up the girl's window. Jed started sleeping in the barn with his rifle, but we all knew it was just a matter of time. Then the sheriff returned, his face grim. "Quincy's filed a new petition," he said, handing me the papers. "He's asking the court to have you removed as caretaker of this land. He's claiming you're unstable, that you're endangering the children, and that you're being manipulated by a woman of questionable character." Lily went pale. "He's coming after the girls," the sheriff nodded. "He's asking for an emergency hearing. He wants a judge to grant the state temporary custody of the twins, pending an investigation into their welfare." "They are safe here," Lily cried, her voice breaking. "Safer than they've ever been." "I know that, ma'am," Tolan said gently. "But Quincy's got money and lawyers. Sometimes that's all it takes to twist the truth until no one can recognize it." "I can't lose them," she whispered after he left, wrapping her arms around herself. "I promised." I stood beside her on the porch, the cruel legal papers crumpled in my fist. "You won't." "He's using them," she said, her voice full of pain. "He's using the thing I love most in this world to hurt you." I looked at her, at the strength and fear warring in her eyes. "Then we show them what love looks like," I said, my voice steady and hard as iron. "We gather our witnesses, Elias, the assessor, the sheriff. We build a wall of truth so high and so strong that not even Quincy's money can tear it down." "And if they try to take them before the hearing?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I met her gaze and made my own promise. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The hearing was held in the county courthouse, a stuffy little room that smelled of old paper and stale justice. To Lily, it must have felt like the end of the world. She walked in holding a girl's hand on each side, her back ramrod straight, her face a pale mask. I walked beside them. Quincy was already there, sitting with his slick city lawyer, looking smug. Next to him sat a woman from Child Services, Ms. Dunham, who looked at us like we were something she'd scraped off her boot. The judge, a woman named Croft, had eyes that didn't miss a thing. Quincy's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a failing ranch run by an unstable man and a mysterious woman with a hidden past, raising 2 children who weren't legally hers in an environment of constant danger. "Your Honor," he finished, "we ask for the immediate removal of the minors to a safe location while this matter is investigated." Lily's hand tightened on the girl's fingers. Then it was my turn. I stood up, and the whole room went quiet. "My father didn't build a ranch," I said, my voice clear and strong. "He built a home. He taught me to protect it, not just from weather and wolves, but from men like my cousin, men who think they can buy and sell people's lives." I gestured to Lily. "This woman and her sisters came here with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and in a few short months, they've done more to make that place a home than my own blood has ever done." I pointed to the back of the room. "Ask Sheriff Tolan, who started the fire that nearly killed us all. Ask the federal assessor, whose name is on the real deed. Ask these girls if they feel unsafe." The judge leaned forward. "Miss Harper, would you like to speak?" Lily stood, her voice shaking at first, then growing stronger with every word. "I am not their mother by law, Your Honor. but I am their family in every way that matters. I made a promise to protect them, and I have kept that promise. This man," she looked right at Quincy, "wants to use them as pawns in his greedy game. He doesn't care about their welfare. He only cares about a patch of dirt." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "I came to this ranch because we had nowhere else to go. I stayed because, for the first time in our lives, we found a home. Please, don't let him take that away from us." Then the surprises started. Arthur Bell, the assessor, took the stand and presented his official report. The land was mine. The map Quincy had was a forgery. Sheriff Tolan presented his report on the arson, naming Quincy as the prime suspect. Elias and Jed both testified about the threats, about the man seen lurking on the property. Even Lily's aunt, Marion, had driven down to speak, telling the court about Lily's years of quiet sacrifice. Finally, the judge called the girls forward. Lottie looked her right in the eye. "Do you feel safe where you live?" Judge Croft asked gently. Lottie nodded. "It's the only home I remember." "And who is Miss Harper to you?" Millie spoke up, her voice small but clear as a bell. "She's our Lily." The judge looked at Quincy, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his smug facade. "Mr. Rock," she said, her voice like ice, "your petition is denied. Your land claim is fraudulent and will be referred to the district attorney for investigation. As for the children, Miss Harper's guardianship is, in the eyes of this court, absolute." A gasp went through the room. Lily nearly collapsed with relief. I caught her arm, my own legs unsteady. Quincy just sat there, stunned, as the judge slammed her gavel down. "This matter is closed." He stormed out of the courtroom without a word. Outside, the sun was blinding. The girls, free at last, ran down the courthouse steps. Lily leaned against the railing, the tears finally coming. "I didn't think we'd win," she whispered. I took her hand. It felt right. "You didn't have to win," I said, a smile finally breaking across my face. "You just had to tell the truth." I looked at her, at this woman who had walked into my life out of a storm and saved it from a different kind. "Ready to go home?" She squeezed my hand and nodded. Home. Weeks passed. The quiet returned to the ranch, but this time it was a peaceful quiet. The threat was gone. Quincy was tangled in his own legal web, facing federal charges. One evening, I found Lily in the kitchen, humming as she baked a pie. "You ever think about making it official?" I asked softly. "Adopting them?" She turned, a smudge of flour on her cheek. "Every single day." "I might know a lawyer who could help with the paperwork," I said. She just looked at me, her eyes shining. "You'd do that? For me?" I stepped closer. "I'd do it for them," I said. "And for you." "And for you?" she whispered back. I just smiled. That Sunday, the four of us walked down to the little white church at the edge of town. Lily in a simple dress, me in my least dusty shirt, and the girls, one on each side, holding my hands. We sat in the front pew, not as a rancher and his housekeeper, but as a family. For the first time in a long, long time, my life didn't feel like something I was just surviving. It felt like something I was building. If you enjoyed this story of how a family can be forged in fire and truth, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next.